ready to get started. Well, there's still more people coming in, but I think we're good to go. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Welcome, Spartans, to the Employer Insights with Galileo Learning. We're really excited to have Galileo Learning here today. We're also excited that you are here as well. Okay, so I'd like to go ahead and welcome our guest and also to introduce to you our Career Center hosts. Anita Manuel is the Associate Director. Anita, would you like to welcome or say hello?
Yes, good. I was going to say good morning, but it's actually officially afternoon. So happy lunch hour. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Anita Manuel, and I'm the Associate Director for Career Education and your co-host for today's Insights.
And I'm Lisa Tchaikovsky, the Assistant Director of Employer Engagement, who will also be your co-host as well. And today's guest, we have the amazing Leslie Howard. And I cannot see, here we go. Leslie Howard, she's an Outreach Coordinator and Campus Relations from Galileo Learning. And so Leslie, I don't think all the students know what Galileo Learning is. Could you just tell us a little bit about what Galileo Learning is?
Absolutely. And first off, thank you all so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you and to answer questions that you have about getting a job during this time. So I work for Galileo. We are a STEAM-based education organization that primarily in the past has provided summer camps to kids and families. And we now offer both virtual and in-person year-round programming as well. And we focus on inspiring kids to be innovators who envision and create a better world. All of our curriculum is hands-on, it's project-based, and the heart of everything that we do is really around problem solving. How do we encourage and inspire kids to solve problems in creative ways? So that again is just scratching the surface of what we do. In 2019, we ran 70 summer camp programs between the Bay Area, Southern California, and Chicago. And impacted more than 30,000 kids that summer.
Wow.
So we have reach, and just like everybody else, we are pivoting right now, and it's a really interesting time.
Great, thank you so much, Leslie. That's really interesting. So tell us a bit about your role at Galileo Learning and how did you get started in your field?
Absolutely. So I am currently the Senior Outreach Coordinator for Campus Relations and Data Analysis. It's a long title to say that I am a recruiter. I primarily work with recruiting university students into roles with us, mostly for summer, but also for year-round roles as well. And I get to also work with the data part of our team to figure out what's working in our hiring process and what isn't. That's still a piece that's new to me, but really exciting. I have also been an assistant camp director for Galileo, working in person with kids and families. And I was a camp director for the last 2 years as well. So getting to run my own camp and hire a team and work with those staff throughout the summer. In terms of how I got started with Galileo in my field, growing up, I attended a theater camp actually, different from Galileo, and loved it and realized through being a camper there and through working with kids then as a counselor that I really enjoy working with kids and that the summer camp model is really inspiring to me as a place where we can create an opportunity for kids and staff to feel safe and inspired. And I ended up finding Galileo because I was finishing my undergrad. I went to the University of Missouri. I have a degree in journalism and a degree in theater performance. And I was going to be starting grad school in the fall to get a master's in education. And I needed a job that was going to pay me to work just for a few months so that I could save some money to go to graduate school, to live with my parents during that time. So I came back here to the Bay Area and I had found Galileo. I expected to work for Galileo one summer, work at camp, be an assistant camp director, start getting management skills, gain some leadership skills, wear a lot of different hats, have some fun. I got about 2 weeks into camp and I realized, ooh, I like this. That was 4 years ago, more than 4 years ago. During my second summer with Galileo, I had actually taken a leave of absence from grad school and come back to California to work. And excuse me, there was an email that came out that had an ad for an iteration of my current job in it. So to be this outreach coordinator for campus relations in undergrad and in grad school, I worked with career services. So reviewing resumes, coaching for interviews, and I really loved working with students. I, again, as someone who has a master's in education, I love higher ed. I think that higher ed is an incredible space. And so this felt like a really great mix between this passion and support that I've had and have for summer camp, and this coaching element and working with students in a university space that I really enjoyed. And I applied for that job and they hired me. And I've been in that role now for 3 years, and it's grown and changed throughout my time there.
That's great.
That's awesome. Well, it's great to hear your story, and also how a lot of it was somewhat unexpected. Like you had a different plan, and then you were open though to the opportunities, and then you realized that some of those experiences actually resonated with you. So I think that's helpful for students to hear. And for those of you who have just joined, I think we have about 66 people who are here. While we're asking some questions of Leslie, if you want to introduce yourself in the chat and just put your name and maybe your major or what you're curious about, that might be helpful for Leslie to get a sense of who's here as well. So feel free to do that. You know, one of the big questions that we get a lot right now is, how does this economy and this distance environment affect internships or my opportunity to do internships, or even the job search? Do you have any tips for our students and how they can navigate their internship or job search during, you know, quote unquote, these challenging times?
I think that that is such a great question. And honestly, when I was thinking about this question, what I was struck by is how so much of the advice that I have for you today is still related to a job search outside of challenging times or outside of a COVID universe. They're just amplified. And the first thing that is a bit more specific to these times is keep your options open and be flexible. A lot of industries are having a tough time right now. And they're pivoting and they're figuring out what they need and what the roles they need are. And just, you know, we're all kind of in this same boat of trying to figure out what's next and what's coming. So if you need to expand your job search outside of that, you know, desired industry that you want to work in, you're still going to gain great experience in a similar role in a different industry, or in the same industry in a different role. So keep your options open, do your research, figure out what's available, and see what else gets you excited. And that, I would say that that's true outside of COVID times as well, is again, really do that research into figuring out what it is you want to do, what's going to motivate you, what gets you excited when you read a job description. Because again, sometimes that's not what you think it's going to be right away. So allow yourself the flexibility to be open to all of those possibilities.
That's really great advice.
Is really, really true outside of challenging times as well, but especially true now. Be proactive and communicate. It's okay to ask questions, talk to organizations about how they're impacted. Be on top of your email, be on top of following up. You're probably going to hear me say this 4 or 5 times today, but really own the communication that you have with every single organization that you apply to, or that you interview with. Follow up, and I'll talk more about that later, but really focus on communication. Set that goal of being the best communicator that that organization has ever seen, because that is supportive for you in the process and in keeping you on an organization's radar. And it's supportive to the organization too, that has a lot of competing priorities at the moment, just given the times that we're in.
Exactly. Go ahead.
Another thing is know your own safety boundaries, and know what you're comfortable with. Are you only comfortable being virtual? Know that for yourself. That is okay. Are you comfortable being in person? Are you comfortable being in person at a social distance? What does that mean in that industry? Know your research. Again, know how that feels for you and trust your gut on that, because only you can make that decision for you. If you are going to be working from home, do some research on what it's like to be in that space and what you need to be successful. I know that for me personally, as someone who didn't work from home before this, it's been challenging. And I've had to pivot and think about, how does my system work differently at home than it does in the office? Can I relate any of what I'm doing now to how I worked when I was a student? And pulling from those different experiences as well. And then this is general advice, but especially right now when unemployment is high, don't be discouraged if you have to apply for quite a few roles. It does not mean that you are not good enough. It just means that there are other people out there who are also good enough. So keep your options open, keep applying. Every conversation, every interview that you have is one step closer to what you're looking for, and take that as experience. Don't let it get you down. You might find something right away. You might find something after a few applications. It might take you a little bit longer, and those are all okay things. Just keep at it, and keep learning throughout that process. So those are my kind of big things for right now. And it all comes down to being proactive and being your own best advocate.
That's really great advice, Leslie. So being proactive, being persistent, making sure that you are a very good communicator, always communicating, always following up, learning throughout the process. Like you said, I love that. Do we have any questions that come through the chat box?
So I think right now people are introducing themselves, and what I'm noticing is we have a real diverse range of majors. So we'll give Leslie a chance to kind of see who's here. But if you do have specific questions related to, any of the internship job search process, how to stand out, best practices for how to do that research, how do you reach out and connect without, making an impression but not being annoying, like any of those things, we can definitely ask Leslie. And Edlin, if you want, our colleague Edlin on the back end, if you want to highlight for us if there's a question that comes in related to these. I know there's some questions that are specific to Galileo, and we will actually have time at the end to talk about the opportunities they have open right now.
Great.
We do have a quick question. Christian G asks, what are the typical age ranges for kids in the program?
That's a great question. For kids in Galileo programs, we work with kids in our summer programs. We've typically worked with kids ages 4 through about 13. We have a couple of different sets of programming in there. And we also have a counselor in training program, or at least have in previous years, to prepare high school students for when they can start working at camp as a part-time intern when they turn 16. And our programming is probably going to shift a little bit for next summer, just again to roll with the times that we're in. But that's still going to be the age range. I primarily work with elementary school students, and I love it.
Yeah. That's great.
Thank you, Leslie.
So Leslie, can you explain what to expect in a virtual or a socially distanced internship?
I can, and the biggest thing I'm going to stress is that's going to look different company by company. I can speak to our experience because we currently have people working with us virtually teaching online classes. And we also have a handful of people working with a new program in a socially distanced space with very small groups of consistent kids. And again, what we've learned from those groups is, proactive communication. Use the tools that are given to you. For our instructors who teach online, we utilize Slack to talk to them during their shifts and their classes and when they're preparing. We utilize email, really any form of communication that's going to be most effective with an individual, we want to use in order to support them. In terms of in-person, socially distant, fully masked programs, we started something new this year so that learning pods, so anywhere from 2 to 6 kids can have an instructor in the afternoon. Again, everyone wears masks. This happens in a consistent space, consistent kids. We do health screenings for everyone. And with those instructors, what I've been hearing the most is that they're finding it really interesting, the experience that they get to have really forming a close relationship with this small community. Again, how do they communicate? And it's, I think, the biggest theme throughout, whether you're with us teaching online or working with this in-person program is that there's, a different level of responsibility than there might have been before when you have a supervisor on site with you. So how do you work on doing that problem solving? How do you know your resources so that when you do need support, you know who to reach out to? And again, it's another communication piece. I'm going to just wear the word communication out today because it's all about, talking with those people. In general, some other advice that I have from recruiters that I've talked to and what I've heard about other internships is, again, if your internship is socially distant, be aware of the safety regulations in your area. Be aware of, do you need PPE? Is that being provided? And what does that look like? And again, making sure that you are comfortable in that situation. And if you're not, that you know what questions you need to ask or what resources you need. And again, really knowing yourself in that. And another piece of that is, again, if you are going to be working remotely, know what you need in that space. Do you need to schedule a time? I heard a great term yesterday that was called defensive calendaring. So how do you make sure that you have that time to take a break during the day? That you're getting a lunch, that you can't have meetings scheduled all day, do you need to get out in the afternoon and take a walk? Depending on the culture of the organization that you're in, all of those things are okay. I'm someone, I need to get sun in the middle of the day, just so I can get that second wind into my afternoon. So be thinking about those things because it's, it's different to be creative in this moment.
So those are some great tips and also a good reminder about what we call like the human skills, right? So like the communication skills, the ability to kind of take initiative, to do your research. The next question we had was really about resumes, because a lot of students will say like, what is the best resume that, a recruiter has seen? What did it have, or what did it look like, or what did it do that made that candidate stand out? But if you could also speak to how students can best exemplify their communication skills, or exemplify that they've taken initiative, because a lot of times you're reading what's on the resume first before you're actually interviewing a student. So that would be helpful too.
Absolutely. So in terms of resumes, I'm going to try and blend answers to your question. So feel free to follow up with me if there's a part that I missed here. But in terms of your resume, the biggest piece of advice that I have on resumes that I cannot stress enough is to make sure that the resume that you are using to apply for a specific job aligns with that job. Tailor your resume for every job you apply to. And there are that sounds like a big task, especially if you're applying to quite a few jobs, but there are ways to make it easy. And I'm happy to share that with you. So for example, if you are keeping your options open and you are applying to physical therapy internships, education internships, and you're applying to retail jobs as well, have 3 distinct resumes for those work streams and then tailor for jobs within that. Because one, the resume that you apply to a retail job with or to a physical therapy internship with might have some information on it that's applicable to what I'm looking at if I'm hiring you for an education internship, but it's going to have a lot of information on it that isn't applicable as well. And therefore you might miss applicable experience that you have. So it gives you more space to show off things that you have done that directly apply to the role that you are looking at. And, another part of that too is kind of the flip side of it. It's exactly the opposite of what I just said, which is think about your transferable skills. Because if you have worked in roles that are more applicable to physical therapy, some of those experiences might still really work for an education internship when it comes to working with people or working with kids or leading groups. So think about what those things are. And again, make sure that they all apply for the job that you are applying to. If I get your resume and it looks like you're applying to a different job, that sends me a message. And it, again, isn't going to be the best showcase of how you could be in that specific role. So do yourself that favor and make sure that you are always tailoring that document. And with that too, in order for you to really show that you have, that especially on the communication skills front, be sure that you are editing your resume. Look for those typos. It's such a little thing, but it does make a really big difference. Make sure that your resume is readable, that it's formatted consistently. Have other people look at your documents just like you would have someone proofread, maybe a letter or a paper. Have them proofread your resume. And if they are asking, hey, what does that mean? Then maybe you need to clarify that further. Also, you have resources from your university. I'm very biased because I worked in career services and I know your career services staff. Use them as a resource. They have so many resources that they can use to help you. And it's part of what you get for being a student at San Jose State. So use that resource because they can help you see things that maybe you didn't before. So those are my biggest things for resumes: the consistency, the editing, and again, tailoring to that job. Read the job description. An exercise that I often talk to people about is if you put the job description, the requirements, the bullet points in one column in a Google Doc, start lining up your own experience with them in the other column. So you're thinking about, what experience have I had that applies to me leading a group of 20, or that applies to me having administration skills, or that shows that I have created a lesson plan. What are those experiences? And they don't have to be exact, because you're still going to learn things on the job, and that's all good. But again, what is most applicable? And then use those and highlight those on your resume. You can also, if it's a first job, you can put a little bit of coursework on your resume. You can show that you're working to gain those skills in that way as well.
Great. Those are all great tips. Thank you, Leslie. So talk to us about LinkedIn. Do you use it to source student talent? Any top tips, what not to do?
Yeah, so with Galileo, I have a colleague who works on LinkedIn more than I do. When I know that as a recruiter who meets a lot of students in person, I often get asked if students can add me on LinkedIn, and I appreciate that they ask. And when you do reach out to I feel like there was a question in the chat about reaching out to people or recruiters or people from organizations you want to work with on LinkedIn. Add them on LinkedIn, always send them a message. Always include a note with that. Otherwise, you're just another random person on the internet, even if your profile looks great. So if you can create that personal connection, whether that's like, hey, Les, I met you today at the San Jose State Career Fair. We talked about dogs, whatever that, even if it's that little intro piece that we had in our conversation, something that's, memorable from that, or, I'm the person who I told you that I taught in Missouri last year. Tell me those things, because that's going to help me remember you. And that's, again, the thing with LinkedIn is creating those personal connections so that it's not just, you running up the numbers on how many you want to get to that 500 plus connections, but so that the people on your LinkedIn are people that you can reach out to, that you can use as a network, that you can follow for information about organizations or industries or topics that you are passionate about. On your LinkedIn profile as a whole, really think about, I love the description section, your kind of about section, and because that can be so much bigger than just the job that you're applying for. What are you passionate about? What are you driven by? What is I talked to someone recently who walked me through their entire process of creating a personal mission. And that was how he decided to structure his about section on LinkedIn. And there are so many ways to do that. There are really good articles online too. Again, I am not a LinkedIn expert, but people write and post on LinkedIn constantly about what to do on LinkedIn. So seek out those resources too, because they're across so many different industries and it's really interesting stuff. And just like your resume, make sure that anything you put on your LinkedIn is well-written, is proofread, is presentable. It doesn't have to be as concise as you put on your resume. It can be a paragraph. It doesn't have to be bullet points. Like, you really get to make that space what it is. So think about what you want to share, how you want to fill out your profile. I keep all of my experience on my profile from when I started working at 15 up until now. So it just lets you show that breadth of experience too. And on the question about being proactive that came up earlier and showing that you're proactive, you have more opportunities to put that in different sections of your LinkedIn or show volunteer experience too, which can also always go on your resume. But think about how you can use those different sections to share your breadth of experience.
It's really great. Do we have some questions that come through the chat box?
I actually want to address a few of them because they're kind of aggregate overall like LinkedIn questions. And I want to let you guys know that you have your own career counselor, your personal career counselor. So if you go to the Career Center website and you click on About Us, you can see all of your counselors who are assigned by industry area. So the particular industry you want to get into. And in addition to resume critiques, we all critique LinkedIn profiles. So we're kind of LinkedIn junkies and obsessed and active on there, and probably writing a lot of the articles too that were referenced. But just one, do not pay for a LinkedIn membership or purchase membership. Everything that you need to be able to do on LinkedIn, you can do for free. Two, if you're a complete stranger, like you have no idea who this person is on LinkedIn, remember that the whole point of LinkedIn is a professional network. So people are wanting to meet new people and are expecting to connect with strangers. That's the beauty of LinkedIn. That the importance is that you read through their profile and understand who they are and what, as Leslie said, that common connection is between you. So my recommendation is always start with alumni because they have an instant connection to you because you guys have the same university, same alma mater. And so that's a nice way of breaking the ice by saying, oh my gosh, I saw your LinkedIn profile. It's amazing that you're pursuing this career at XYZ company. I'm a current student at SJSU as well, and I'm in the same program that you came from. Would you be open to chatting a little bit about your career path? So those are just some quick highlights on how you can connect with strangers, and it's okay to do that on LinkedIn because that's the point of LinkedIn. There are some questions as far as if Galileo is hiring and if there are remote positions. So we can get into that, but we have a whole slide in time just for that. So I'd like to just make sure that we get to this next question and then we'll go right over to Galileo and their opportunities, because this is a common and very important question too. And Leslie, if you can just tell us about how your organization supports diversity and inclusion in hiring. This has become really important as far as like values for our students and just understanding, you know, the mission and vision of Galileo and how that kind of comes into play in talent development.
Absolutely. That is a question that's really important to us as well. We are at the heart of what we do, a mission-driven organization, and a huge part of that is how we support our people and how we support the world as a whole. A few years ago, Galileo actually introduced an official inclusion and diversity program throughout our company. And we are continuously working to expand it and make sure that it is incorporated into every aspect of our workflow, which includes recruiting and hiring. So we have a handful of internal practices that we do to help ensure that we have diverse candidates at all stages of our application process. And we actually look at our data to see, okay, in our process, do we have a certain group of people falling out of our process at a certain point? Why is that? How do we change that? How do we be more supportive to more people? And that is something that, again, is a continual process, but something we are incredibly dedicated to, especially even right now when we're thinking about how do we pivot? What is going to need to be different next year? How do we, throughout all of that, make our process more and more inclusive? We also, beyond just our hiring process and sourcing from, whether that be diverse schools or organizations or, building our network to make sure that it includes, that it includes as many different people as possible. We are really trying to do the work as an organization too. And we are, internally right now with our headquarters team, we are doing inclusion and diversity professional development sessions. There is I believe it's an 8-week anti-racism training that a lot of us are doing. We have affinity groups for people of color. And we are continuously taking feedback from staff across our organization and saying, how do we make this better? What else, what other information do you need? And working for Galileo, I know that I definitely feel supported in using some of my work time to continue my growth and knowledge as it comes to inclusion and diversity, to again, make my work and the process that we do better. So that's just my personal experience. We also, with all of our camp staff, we do have inclusion and diversity training included in our official camp training. And then camp directors lead their staff through multiple inclusion and diversity trainings throughout the summer and set community expectations in collaboration with their staff regarding what they want their site to look like when it comes to being an inclusive community. And lastly, this trickles all the way down through to who our customers are too and who our campers are. We are in a lot of different communities, and we also, no matter what's going on, prioritize having a financial assistance program that allows as many different campers to come into our programs as possible. And those can be really large discounts for families who might not otherwise be able to come to camp, or who might only be able to come for 1 week otherwise. And something that really always inspires me is the way that our CEO talks about that program. When he gets questions about it, you can tell that it's so on the forefront of his mind. And so those are just a few things that we're doing. But again, we want the mission of inclusion to permeate all aspects of our company.
Great. Let's see here. So Leslie, we get many questions about how to best navigate the interview process and how to handle salary negotiation.
Yes.
Yes. So any tips in that area, and what are your tips on successful interviewing?
Absolutely. So I am an interview nerd. I love job interviews. I love going to job interviews. I like interviewing.
Wow.
I think that they are so much fun because it's an opportunity to talk to someone and to tell stories and to build a connection between the person that you're talking to. In terms of just tips on how to nail a virtual interview or an in-person interview, the first thing sounds so basic, but it is to show up. Believe it or not, ghosting is actually a huge trend in the interview process, and nobody likes ghosting. Just crummy, it's not a great use of our time, it's not a good use of your time. If for some reason you can't make it to your interview, life happens. We all know that, we're all human. Communicate that to the organization, especially right now, things are strange. Like, be communicative, be proactive. You should always be the person to reach out. If you have gotten another job and you need to end a process with an organization who's given you an interview, tell them that. Be honest, thank them for their time. It's just a sign of mutual respect, and it also, it keeps you on, good footing if you want to apply for that organization again in the future. And to be sure that, again, you're showing that you're respectful and communicative. Few other things in terms of virtual interviews specifically, don't spin in your chair. Be sure that your space is professional. It doesn't mean that you have to have the perfect Zoom, set. I'm in my bedroom, but I make my bed. I make sure that the space behind me looks professional when I'm in a professional meeting. So keep those things in mind. Another thing, especially right now with virtual interviews aren't new, which is great. So organizations know that technology is weird, and sometimes things with technology happens. Something freezes, something blips, your Wi-Fi goes out. We all know that tech is weird. Own that, be prepared for it. Don't let it frazzle you. If for some reason someone freezes, you can always say, hey, I'm so sorry, you froze for just a minute. Can you actually repeat that question? I want to make sure that I hear it properly. And they'll do the same for you if that happens. We're all on the same page there. And something that you can do to help control for that too is be sure that you've done a test call in close proximity to your interview. Call a friend, check your lighting, check your video, check your audio, make sure that that system is set up for you. because that's going to help you minimize getting on the call and being like, oh, wait, and here's this, and this is strange, and oh, nope, okay, here we go, now we're good. You know, it just helps you ease your mind, calm yourself, get into the space before then. Similarly, if that friend or someone that you know or your career services staff want to do a mock interview with you, that can be really helpful. Just to start thinking about, all right, how do I wrap my mind around these questions they might ask me? What stories am I going to tell to answer their questions in the best way? How am I presenting myself? Am I saying a lot? That's something that I really had to overcome. And I know that it's something that where I'm still not perfect, but I really pay attention to it right there. So again, be aware of those things and do your prep work. There are mock interview questions, again, all over the internet from your career services staff. I will often stand in front of the mirror when I was interviewing and would answer interview questions so that I knew what I looked like when I was answering questions, whether that be in person or virtual. So those are, again, just a few of my initial pieces of advice there, but the communication piece is huge. And be prepared to just talk to someone and form a connection. An interview is just as much for you as it is for an organization. Be sure you have questions. If you do have questions for the organization at the end of your interview. No, interviews are a lot of fun. So just go, every conversation that you have is going to get you somewhere.
I'm excited that you're the first person I think I've ever talked to that has actually said that they love interviewing and that they're fun. And I think that's a great perspective to have, because most people that we talk to are petrified of interviews. And so I think remembering that it's a two-way street, and that the more you practice, the better you get at it, and hopefully the more enjoyable it will be. So with that, I know a lot of people are curious about, okay, I want to learn more about Galileo. I'm really curious about what the types of positions are, and then how can they start getting connected with you or those roles?
Perfect. So we, at the moment, and we really upfront, we don't have anything that we are hiring for today. That being said, there are a lot of different roles and possibilities that will be coming down the pike in the next few months. We are currently fully hired for our virtual and in-person paid internships. So those are with our Camp Galileo Anywhere. That's our virtual program. You can actually find us online. So if you go to our website, that is galileo-camps.com, you can learn more about that program and see what we're doing with kids virtually through Zoom classes. You can also look at our, it was Camp Galileo Anywhere, and then we have Galileo at Home, a lot of new acronyms this year. And Galileo at Home is the learning pod program that I talked about earlier in this presentation. And we just wrapped our hiring for instructors and group leaders for that program. But again, as we enter into the spring, it's very possible that we will have more positions opening up. I can't guarantee that yet because I don't know what the world's going to look like, but keep your eyes out for those. We are also going to be opening up summer positions. Our hiring this year is actually going to start in March, is the plan. And we're going to be hiring people to work at camp. Currently, that program is still being fleshed out in terms of details. We're making sure that it is incredibly safe before we announce anything officially. But if you want to work with kids, you're excited to be hopefully in person next summer, keep your eyes out for that. And if you want to learn more about the roles that we have available, or you want to get notified as soon as they become available, you can go to our jobs mailing list, and you're going to see the galileo-camps.isams.com/connect. You can put your name and your email address in there. And again, we're going to send you updates as soon as we launch positions. One thing that I recommend in the meantime is to go on and read about our programs and read about our current jobs, read about our mission. You can read all about our mission online. You'll also read about the Galileo innovation approach, which I haven't talked about today, but that is the pedagogy that we use to inspire kids to be innovators. And our website is also just full of really fun videos, both for roles to work with our programs, and also just to see what we're doing. And if you are an educator, you're working in an education space, we have a lot of resources on there as well. We know that this time has been challenging for everybody, and we want to provide as many supports as we can. If you have questions that come up over the next few months, or just you want to talk more about jobs, you can email me. My email is down there at the bottom. It is my first name at galileo-learning.com. If you would like to add me on LinkedIn, you may also do that. But again, please just send me a message, say, hey, I was on that webinar. Great to meet you, and give me a little bit about you just so I know who you are. I, just from a personal perspective, screen people before I add them to my LinkedIn. So just be sure you're sending me that information.
That's great. Thank you, Leslie. Oh, go ahead.
Thanks, Leslie. We have 15 minutes. So please, for those of you who are attending, if you could just fill out our participation feedback form. I'll actually ask Edlin if she can copy this into the chat and you guys can directly click into it. If these events are helpful for you and you want us to invite more employers for Employer Insights, then we need to know that so we can continue the program. And the what's in it for you, you can actually get entered into a raffle to win a $20 Amazon card. We all need that right now. So there is an incentive to participate. And then Leslie, if you're open to it, can the participants ask some questions directly?
Absolutely, please.
Okay, so for those of you who want to practice your communication skills, you can unmute yourself or turn on your video if you'd like to ask Leslie a question. And if you're feeling shy, you can type it in the chat as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
So earlier you had mentioned, I guess when you're tailoring your resumes, you wanted to make a column for what the job position is looking for, and then make another column for what skills you have. But how would you phrase a skill that you have that's not like exactly the same thing that they're looking for? I guess it's the skill that you have learned is not like a traditional means of skill learning.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And that in that column exercise, again, that's just for you. That's just for you to start thinking about how you tailor your resume. But in terms of a skill that you have that you see, I'm assuming that this is something you see as applicable to the role but might not be called for specifically. Is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. I think that that's great. And I was in a webinar yesterday with some other recruiters, and they were talking about how sometimes a company doesn't know everything that they need. You could bring a new skill to the table that is beyond what they've thought of for that role. And that's fantastic. Again, I know that my role has grown and changed with me as I've learned new skills. So if you can come in with something like that too, that's fantastic. And I think that the way that you can incorporate that on your resume, it depends on what the skill is and what the job you're applying for is. But how can you think about the way that that would transfer to that position when you share your experience? So if you are trying to come up with a good example here for you, but think about if you see it fitting into that job description, you say, hey, I know that I can bring this thing to the table. That could be a great thing. Again, just include it in your bullet points for the job that it is most applicable to, or to the volunteer experience that it's most applicable to, or to the class that it's most applicable to. And it's also something that you don't have to just keep on your resume, but if you submit a cover letter to a specific role, include that in your cover letter. That's your cover letter for organizations who ask for them, is another way for you to tell a company exactly why you are a great fit for that role. And that can be a really wonderful place to flesh, be like, I have this great skill and I think that it applies to the job in X way, and be really explicit about that. And lastly, again, that's something you can talk about in an interview. So that would be how I would just think about the different ways to share that, especially if it isn't fully direct. And again, if you put that skill on your resume, a recruiter could look at it and be like, oh, I hadn't thought about that way, and be interested in you because of that. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, any other questions for Leslie?
Yeah, I had a question. Thank you, first of all, Leslie, for taking the time to kind of sit with us and kind of talk through a lot of this. I know you were talking about like camp positions. I was wondering if there were any actually like headquarter positions, because I was just looking at your website and I thought those were some really cool positions. So I was wondering if those are actually open right now.
That is a great question. At the moment, we don't have any headquarters positions available. That being said, and actually, thank you, because that was something that I didn't mention earlier. We do open up seasonal headquarters positions, and those, we're still putting together a timeline for when those will launch. But again, if you get your name on our jobs mailing list, we will notify you as soon as possible. Just due to the nature of this year, our hiring timelines are shifting quite a bit, so I don't want to give you information that isn't fully correct. But get your name on that list. We hire for customer service positions, so working directly with our families to make sure that everything they need is set up for camp. And then we also hire for seasonal headquarters roles on our hiring team. So on the team that I work with, and that is all about going through resumes. It's very potentially this, you're going to have some interview support, but there are going to be different aspects of those positions to, again, help people move through our pipeline and hopefully end up in roles with our programs. So if those are things that you're interested in, definitely sign up for that jobs mailing list. That list will also, if you will have an option to check off different boxes for departments at headquarters you might be interested in. So when we are hiring for full-time year-round roles again, you'll get notifications for those departments that you're interested in.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question.
So for those of you who are going to ask questions, just a good practice is if you can introduce yourself, like your name and maybe what your major is, so that Leslie has a good idea of who you are. And then also follow up to that, what can students do for, there's several like who are really interested in like what's open with Galileo. In the meantime, when they're waiting for that opportunity, what are some experiences that you guys really value? Like you mentioned customer service, you mentioned like communication and collaboration. What can our students do now that they can put on their resumes so when the positions open, they're going to look really good?
Yeah, that's a great question. When you're applying to positions with Galileo, if you're applying to a position that directly works with kids, be thinking about that experience that you have with kids and put that front and center on your documents. So if that is a matter of what you can do now to get some of that experience with kids, that can be something that you are working toward, whether that is taking a specific class or whether that is having another job or opportunity that works with kids. So you understand what it's like to lead a group of kids. Leading a group of 5-year-olds is challenging, but it's also really fun. So how do you think about what experience you can get that will lend itself to an experience like that? In terms of customer service too, that I am just a big believer in general of customer service, regardless of your industry, is such valuable experience. It is empathy building. It teaches you about communication. I say this when I've worked a lot of retail. I did that all through school, and it was a really positive experience, hard sometimes. And also I use those skills constantly now in just terms of talking to people and starting conversations. So anytime you can get customer service experience, that's not only going to help you when applying for jobs with Galileo, but jobs across the board. If you are wanting to work on our seasonal headquarters teams, again, that customer service experience is huge. Find opportunities with organizations that hire people or that look at resumes and start to get some of that familiarity, because that could be really positive transferable experience as well.
Great. Do we have other students that have questions for Leslie since she took time out today? Again,
Yes.
if you're shy, oh, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. And hi, Lacey. And this is Christina Perry. I'm currently a student in South State as a major in human factor economics. So my goal is trying to be a UX researcher. So I wanted to know any information regarding that, any opportunity in Galileo.
Fantastic. No, that's a great question. I actually learned about what UX research was by talking to students at San Jose State a few years ago. And I actually live with a UX researcher. So congratulations, it's a really fun career path. In terms of UX with Galileo specifically, we don't currently have UX specific roles. Depending on what your specialization is within UX, or if there's something that you would want to work with specifically, I have often in the past directed people to our summer programs, working with kids in more technical roles. So in the past, we've had a middle school program with more either coding specific classes or in video creation classes. I've had people who are like, oh, I really like this UX research and I have this other passion. So how do we blend those things to help share that with kids? And also for that UX experience, we have a professional development and training team through our headquarters. They're a small but mighty team, and that's really looking at how we optimize our training systems. We, in the past, again, have done a mix of online and in-person training. And so having that, the way that you think about things when you're thinking about UX research can be really helpful for those roles. So again, there's a transferability there. It's not a UX research specific role, but thinking about what else can your major allow you to do can be a really great way to bring those to an organization like ours, or other organizations that serve your other passions too.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there more questions out there? Any burning questions that you have that you would love to ask Leslie? Again, you can put them in the chat box if you prefer.
I have one question. I'm Paloma. I am a master's student in the counselor education program. I was interested in coming in because as a future educator, I'm looking for like summer positions where I could maybe get some interesting experience. And do you see a lot of like educators, teachers, school counselors over the summer participating in the Galileo as a Galileo employee?
We do, and that's actually one of the main groups that we reach out to in general, in addition to doing outreach to universities. And I often reach out to education programs at universities specifically. We work with a lot of different organizations that are especially in early teacher training. So we have quite a few educators who come and work with us, especially early in their careers, where they're saying, hey, here's what I'm doing during the school year and I'm really enjoying it. And I want to diversify my skill set. I want to keep getting stronger in a specific area. I want more leadership experience. I want more management experience. I want more experience in a classroom where I can be more creative and flexible. So we absolutely see that. I highly encourage you to apply for summer roles. And another role that you can also look at is our positions for next summer that we'll be launching soon. It's a role that I've held, and that is our camp director role, where if you have already some team management experience, you could actually be running your own camp program and helping to hire your team and plan for camp and really be the leader and culture pillar of that program. And if that is a job that you want more information about, I highly encourage you to email me, and I'm happy to share that with you. And we'll continue to get you information as those jobs launch in the upcoming weeks.
Thank you.
Absolutely. On that similar note, we also have other leadership roles at camp, assistant camp director, which I've done as well, working directly with that camp director. So if you don't have quite as much independent team leadership yet, that assistant director role can be really, really great in terms of working with someone who's going to be a mentor and that you can ask questions to and still have a lot of autonomy around camp and really help support your staff.
Yes, students, and I also have Leslie's email address here. So if you see it here, go ahead and snap a photo. That way you have it and you can send Leslie an email with your questions. Do we have any other, anyone else that would like to ask a question for Leslie?
Yes, I have a question. So, hi, my name is Eduardo Garcia and my major is Justice Studies. What is a great tip to improve my communication skills?
Talk to people. That is kind of my biggest piece of advice there is, depending on what, identify what those things are in your communication skills that you want to strengthen. Be specific with yourself. It's a process of growth. It's a process that's different for everyone. It's different by your industry. and, talk to people, get that feedback. People, talk to your professors about how you communicate. Ask for feedback. Ask for feedback, ask for feedback, ask for feedback. Because again, that's going to help you identify what are those specific things that you want to work on. For me, I say and I have filler words, and sometimes I speak too quickly. So those are things that I consistently think about when I'm speaking to people or speaking in settings like this. It's different when I teach and thinking about how I can really relate that. So again, that's my personal experience. And though that came primarily from, I was teaching English one summer and at a different program, and another teacher came up to me and she said, "Hey, I'm hearing from your kids that you're speaking too quickly. They're having trouble understanding you." And I immediately thought about, okay, how do I slow down? How do I communicate that to my kids? So that was very specific to that setting. And again, it's about just putting yourself out there, being vulnerable, asking for that feedback, and continuing to talk to people. Again, if you're looking for that specifically in a job interview setting, keep going to interviews, have mock interviews, do multiple mock interviews, do mock interviews with different people. If you're looking for how do you improve your written communication, there are so many free classes out there right now. I'm amazed by, I know that San Jose State's going to have plenty of classes that you can take as well to continue to increase your writing skills. I've been really impressed by Coursera has a lot of different opportunities as well for classes across the board. I'm sure they have something. Seek out those opportunities, have someone look at your writing, and again, give you feedback.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you. That's a great question.
I think we have time for one more question. Does somebody have a question?
This is your chance to practice those communication skills.
Oh, excuse me. How can we access the recording of this Zoom session?
That is a great question. There is a Google Doc that we put in the chat, and I'll ask our colleague, I don't know if Edelyn's still on. I think she is. If she can repost that Google Doc, you just fill out that form and then we can send you the recording.
And I've just posted the link in the chat.
Thank you. Well, that I think is a wrap, you guys. Very good. Thank you so much, Leslie, for your time. And thank you to all of you who joined us today, like very active questions and the active chat. So please stay in touch with us through the Career Center. If you just go to sjsu.edu/Career Center, you can see any upcoming events that we host. Leslie, thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all of your great questions. Feel free to keep in touch with me and add yourself on our mailing list to learn more about Galileo.
Great. Thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you, Spartans, for being here. That concludes our show.
Stay safe, everyone. Thanks.